Thank you very much for joining me on this Tuesday. I'm meteorologist Brian Shields. First off, thinking of you in Dominica, back through St. Lucia, where we had some devastating flooding over the last few days. And that's thanks in part to this system up here. Look at that train. This is just so long of the rain and storm still near the ABC Islands, watching Colombia, Venezuela. Look how this has pulled all the way into Nicole. And that was the concern. I think we started talking about this together about a week and a half ago, where we would get some spots, unfortunately, with some big time flooding. It was hard to tell which islands would get it, but we've had it in spots, and we're still watching out for the threat of that across the Caribbean. Of course, lots of attention as we get back through the Bahamas, Florida, in the southeastern United States, with Nicole becoming more of a classic system now, not subtropical in nature anymore. It is now a true tropical storm at this point. But look at these feeder bands just wrapping around this system and just feeding up to the north. There's Bermuda. We've got some weather around, but overall, again, Nicole staying away. We've got higher seas, and then Nicole will get caught up in a front. So always got my eye on Bermuda, but we're in pretty good shape. But still over toward Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, we may get some more rain and storms. Montserrat, Antigua, and Barbuda, watching out for that possibility of flooding. Even near Guyana, watching near Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, more scattered rain and storms. But here is the major player right now. This here is Tropical Storm Nicole, which looks to become a hurricane, and it is just very large. The wind field is so large with this, so I want to break it down further for you, kind of dissect this. Here we are across the Bahamas, Nassau, Freeport, for example, really watching the central and northern Bahamas. Again, the Bahamas 700 miles wide, so I like to break it down because we've got a lot of islands to cover. Now, as we take a look at the latest on this, here's the latest track, which has been shifting a little more to the north as far as the winds right now at about 51 miles per hour. So it is a tropical storm. We're seeing those tropical storm kind of really wrapping itself up into a tropical storm. Down the road, though, the winds are going to be increasing up to about 70 miles per hour as it approaches the Bahamas. And then I want to take you out in time along the track to dissect this for you. That's category 1 right there. So northern Bahamas, that would have winds of 75 miles per hour. So we're looking at some of the winds of 120 kilometers an hour, roughly. I got to do my math, about 120 kilometers an hour. But again, basically hurricane status over the northern Bahamas, and then working its way back toward Florida, and then eventually getting caught up in a front. Now, the models have been very consistent. Even when there's been some changes, the models are changing together with this, so at least they're all picking up on the changes in the environment together. So all of those models shooting this a little bit more down to the south, and we'll get into that in a second, and then eventually near the northern Bahamas, there could be a direct landfall. We'll keep an eye on that, and then working its way back toward Florida. By the way, if you are in Florida, the resource, WFTV.com, head there. I'll be streaming on there. So again, not going to break it down in depth for Florida. Of course, I'm covering Florida in depth, just kind of a different resource there. Check WFTV.com. We'll be streaming on there to give you the very latest, because we have those hurricane warnings now up. Hurricane warnings across the Bahamas, northern Bahamas, and then again, as you get back toward coastal sections of Florida, even working inland in Florida. And look at this wind field. These are the tropical storm force winds expanding close to North Carolina. Because it was subtropical, it was broader. And I know this is crazy, but I want to show you this. This shows you the wind field of tropical storm force winds in the future, just going out in time. And you see these brighter colors here. That's where we could get some of the hurricane force winds once it becomes a hurricane, and then rolling on shore, potentially near Cape Canaveral. So watching that, but just such a broad system. And that's an issue for the seas. And of course, when we deal with islands, and generally flatter islands, like a lot of us are across the Bahamas, that means more coastal flooding, because we get that surge, or at least that persistent wind. So a big wind field with this system. So let's focus on everything now. Of course, the focus on Nicole. And as we get into the afternoon, conditions start to go downhill. But as I mentioned, that big fetch, or that big kind of stream of rain and storm. So watching my friends again, St. Lucia, Dominica, Guadalupe, watching us, even over toward Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, scattered rain and storms. But the Bahamas, the focus as we get into tomorrow morning, that's when we're going to get some of the worst weather. It'll be a strong tropical storm at that point tomorrow morning, northern Bahamas. and then as the day goes on, becoming a hurricane or at least close to it. Worse weather tomorrow afternoon in the Bahamas, so have those preps done for today for hurricane conditions, and then it's going to work its way back into Florida. With that, southern and central Bahamas will get more of a southerly flow on the south side of it. Northerly flow, that's going to bring in that surge to parts of Florida. So then this works into Florida tomorrow night as a hurricane with hurricane and tropical storm conditions. This is by Thursday morning, but after that, across the Bahamas, good shape, not good shape, but better shape again as this system moves. And then it gets caught up in a front, so that's really going to enhance the rain as we get into later on Thursday. Parts of Georgia up through the Carolinas, and then eventually down the road, even say up toward West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Virginia itself, we'll see a higher chance of rain. This is by Friday morning. This is Friday morning at 11 o'clock. Then this is a spot I've been keeping an eye on. We've been talking about this, I think, the last 3 to 4 videos, watching out for some scattered storms, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Grenada, but not seeing anything organized here. And again, Panama, Colombia, Costa Rica, more scattered storms. Belize, the Cayman Islands, Jamaica, we have overall been quieter, which we'll take. Again, we have that threat from Lisa, and then we have the damage from Lisa in Belize, which we're still dealing with, trying to clean up from that. So a little more settled in spots, but still some areas to watch. Steering conditions, high pressure to the north, that's blocking it. That's why, my friends in the Bahamas, it is not escaping. And then it gets tied into that front. Front looks a little bit stronger, so it should pull it in a little bit more so and then move to the north. But there's Bermuda, and that's what I was mentioning. Again, this kind of moving away from Bermuda and then kind of curving around Bermuda as we get down the road, as it gets caught up into that front. All right, let's get a look at the computer models. The European and the Canadian right now in agreement on basically a Category 1 hurricane, high impacts, northern Bahamas, and back through Florida, and then spreading the rain back into the north. So I showed you that American model. The models are all pretty similar, but I wanted to let you know that I'm looking at everything, steering conditions and all those models. Breaking down the Bahamas a little bit more, because again, we've got a zillion islands, so we'll get you to it. The hurricane conditions are possible, say as you get toward Freeport, Treasure Cay, you get toward Castaway Cay. So we've got a lot of tourism spots in here, a lot of those cruise ship docking spots or islands through here. Marsh Harbor right there. So this is where we could have winds 110 kilometers an hour or greater, upwards of 120, which would put it at about category strength and or hurricane category strength. And again, watching out for the flooding here, but still flooding down here as the winds switch around. Nassau, we're not going to have hurricane conditions, but borderline tropical storm conditions. Again, most of this will be up to the north, but still, you'll know something's nearby as you get toward Nassau, over toward Black Point, Georgetown, because again, the seas are going to be rocking, and we'll watch out for some of the overwash and some of the coastal flooding, even as we get down toward Nassau and pulling down to the south. As far as the rain is concerned, I'm still concerned about flooding across the eastern Caribbean, because I mentioned those long feeder bands stretching into it. So you see these brighter colors, you see some of the purples, that's upwards of 100 millimeters plus or 4 inches plus. And yeah, some of this is over water, but like we talked about with the previous flooding events in Dominica and St. Lucia, that, you know, it's just still kind of a wait and see. Does this kind of purple shading here end up over here? So I'm going to monitor that. So I am concerned about the flooding. Northern Bahamas, you see some of those really bright colors. That's 150 millimeters or greater, so that's 6 inches or more, half a foot or more of rain. Rain could be as much as 10 inches, and again, then that sweeps into parts of Florida watching the rain. Again, WFTV, good resource for that on the Florida side, WFTV.com. There'll be a lot of streaming there, especially if you just like watching weather. Nobody wishes for storms, I hope not, but if you like watching weather, again, that's a good resource there. Now here, I want to show you the water temps. A little bit cooler where the system was organizing. That's why it was subtropical in nature to start, 27 degrees, 30 to the south, but as Fahrenheit over here, as you get here, see this kind of coloring here, this orange shading? This is the Gulf Stream. It's very warm water that kind of spins up the coast, and Nicole's actually going to go over that. Temperature is about 87 degrees, so that's about 30 to 31 Celsius here, and that's one of the reasons I do expect it to strengthen into a hurricane or close to it, because this is going to go over the Gulf Stream that's near the northern Bahamas, and as it works its way over toward Florida. And there are the seas, 24, 25 feet sitting offshore, near shore 14 to 21 feet. So you're looking offshore 24, 25 feet. I think that's 6 to about 8 meters. That is intense stuff, and that's why that surge is going to be the one of the big issues out of this system. So some of the key points, again, today Nicole becomes tropical. It is tropical now, becoming a strong tropical storm. So that did happen. By the time we get into tomorrow morning, watching more of that flooding in the northern Bahamas, and then tomorrow evening, Nicole should become a hurricane. Then Wednesday night into Thursday, that would be the worst weather for the weather in Florida, and that surge about 3 to 5 feet or more. So trying my best to keep you covered. Clearly, we have a lot of geography we're covering here, talking about the flooding in St. Lucia and Dominica, and then swinging back to the Bahamas and keeping an eye on Bermuda. So do my best that I can. But this is a weather community, so put your comments down, and we can help each other out. So I do appreciate that. But if you're in the path of either the flooding rain in the Caribbean or Nicole, we're thinking of you. Please, please stay safe.